Hello guys, and we are back for part 2 of the Tonelico feature. And this will be the final part for now, unless they make 2 more games. But either way, the 2 games we're going to be taking a look at in this video are both on the PlayStation 3, and they are Tonelico Koga, Knell of RCL, and Arno Surge, Ode to an Unborn Star. So for now, we're going to be taking a look at the 3rd game in the series, and that is, well, like I already said, Tonelico Koga, Knell of RCL, or what I like to call it, Tonelico 3, because, well, it's just much easier. And, well, thankfully, we don't have the Japanese title, because this one is even longer. And it roughly translates to Tonelico 3, the girl's song that pulls the trigger of world demise. Man, they really do love their fancy-sounding names. So just like the first 2 in the series, the game was developed by Gust and Banpresto, and published by NIS America. Also interesting to note is that this was the first game that NIS America published that happened to get an M rating, and that is one indication to tell you that we are going to see some weird shit. And it was released in the year 2011 in North America. So like always, we're going to start with talking about the story. So this game takes place 2 years after the events of the second game, and is now in the region of Sol Cluster of the planet RCL. So the tower this time is called the Tower of Harvestasha, which kinda looks like a big ass gun if you ask me. And the mountainous land area is called Great Fang. And there's a city on top of the tower which is known as Clustania, which is a region mostly dominated by Ravatails. And all you know about them is that they are a bunch of bitches who like to destroy towns that are getting too populated. And they also like to kidnap people and turn them into vegetables. Now, no, I don't mean someone's gonna turn into like a broccoli or some shit. I mean like they'll just like go mindless. So that's all you gotta know what this world is like. But as for the main character, well, you take place of a character named Aoto. And he is an apprentice steeplejack who is also probably the biggest square I've ever seen in a video game. And the reason why I think he's such a big square is because most of the time whenever he gets a chance with a girl, he always ends up fucking it up. And sometimes, it's even painful to watch at times, but either way, yeah, he's just a big fucking square. That's all you need to know about him. So he hears a bunch of noise outside, and when he goes up, all he sees is... yeah, that's a little, weird. So yeah, this person is named Mute, and as you can tell, it's, well, no comment. But either way, the whole point of this whole scene is the fact that Mute is trying to, like, attack this chick and some old guy. And she's a part of the Clustanian army, so of course, you're trying to defend these people and kick this person's ass. So after all that, the swordswoman now turns into this other chick, and this chick is named Saki. And no, it's not the alcoholic drink, but either way, she's one of the main love interests that you can choose within this game. Now, she's one of those love and peace people who really hates violence. And it seems like she was running away from the Clustanian army, but she doesn't know where she's been ever since she got out of that swordswoman form who is known as Sake Alume. Now let me explain this real quick, is that in this game there's a new type of Ravatail that's just very rare, and these types of Ravatails is that whenever they change personality, their physical form changes too. So Aoto decides to help her out and wants to escort her to go where she needs to go, but Aoto ends up meeting up with a friend named Tatsumi, who is pretty much a V-board fanatic. And well, do I really need to explain the V-board? Well, it's pretty much a skateboard, but just, they hover. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. So after when they meet up with him, they end up getting attacked again. But this time, Saki decides to do something called miracles. And now this is the part where things get really weird, okay? So what happens here is that she takes off all her clothes, and yes, they have to show it in this whole Sailor Moon type of fashion. And then after that, all the enemies turn into cake. And of course not. Of course I'm not making this up. I mean, what else would you expect to happen? Either way, they escape and they now have to find someone named Dr. Hikari Gojo, who has been recommended to go see by Tatsumi to go help Aoto and Saki. But the doctor lives in this place that lives underground called Eterna Shaft. But on the way going there, they end up meeting a new girl named Finnel, and she is the other girl where you can have an interest with. Now, she is very clumsy and is afraid of heights, but one thing that is amusing is that she likes to falcon kick Aoto in the face all the time. And she runs a bistro. So then they finally meet Dr. Hikari Gojo, who is a Ravatologist who specializes in, well, you guessed it, Ravatails. And he's the very dexterous type of person, and one thing that is very amusing is that the weapon he uses is a medicine bag that shoots lasers. Yeah, I'm not making that up either. And I still think it's really strange that this guy even joins your party. I mean, he doesn't really look like a main character or anything like that. But with that aside, I do think he is a decent character. So yeah, after all that, this is pretty much where the journey begins, where now they have to go up to the Tower of Tonelico, or what they call it as the Tower of Harvestasha. And they meet other characters along the way, like Reverend Gengai. who fights for the Great Fang Alliance, and sadly this guy never joins your party. I mean, he looks like someone that would. And then the last person that you get in your party, although this is not until much later, is named Tyria. And she is a Raventail who has been put to sleep for thousands and thousands of years. And after she wakes up from all that time, the first thing she says is, fried bread. Yeah, I found that to be pretty damn funny the first time. Now, there's a lot of other things I could talk about the story, such as the whole thing about the Heart of Gaia, Plastania's plans, Archea's plans, and a whole slew of other things, but I won't, because like I've already said about the first part, I don't want any spoilers whatsoever. And I'll be quite honest with you, the story in this game is actually not that bad. Now, I'll be quite honest here, this game for the series of Tonelico is considered to be the black sheep of the series, and yet, as for, you know, a series that's not even all that well known, it being considered as a black sheep, that must mean something must not be right. But I'm gonna get into that much later on, so we'll just keep it at this for now. So for now, let's talk about the gameplay. And this one has definitely changed since the past two games. So as for looking through the towns, yeah, it's still the same thing, looking through menus, and then when you go into the actual area of the town, you can just walk around and stuff. And as for exploring dungeons, yeah, it's still the same thing too, nothing much to say, although this time you can actually jump again. It's a really weird jump to be sure, but it's at least a jump. And it still has that enemy engage bar, but the thing that is really different is the actual battle system. So the battle system this time around is a real-time action-based one, very similar to Star Ocean, which is a series I never experienced with yet, but just from what I remember seeing of gameplay in those games, it does look kinda similar to that. So this time around there's only one Raventail that participates in battle, and you have to protect the Raventail by making sure no enemies invade into her zone, and if they do, all you have to do is just run back and just try to defend, and you just kick them out of the fucking zone. So you run around, you hit things, then you have your two other vanguards which are played by AI. I really wish this game was like 2 or 3 players, that would have been nice. And you can use items whenever the hell you want. And as for the way the song magic works, well, this time you only get one sort of song magic with each character, or each personality within the character if that counts. And the way you have to charge the song magic, well at least faster, is that you have to go hit the enemies within a certain rhythm to it at the bottom of the screen, as you can see, where the ones that are red are the ones that gain it up more faster. And then when it says purge ready where the heart is, now before I say it, just be prepared that this is going to be even more weirdness. So you can hold either R1, L1, R2, or L2, while shaking the remote, so pretty much this game uses 6-axis technically. The Raventail will start purging, and when she purges, well, yeah, she takes off a strip of clothing. Yeah, wonderful. So just from the logic of this game, apparently Raventails get stronger song magic if they take their clothes off. Yeah, I really have no idea what the fuck to say to that. Now, I know that the first two games did have some fan service in it, but not anything like this. And like I've said many times before in the past, at least mostly in my anime reviews, is that fan service is okay every once in a while, but as long as it's not trying to be like oversaturated over story. When, well, in this case, yeah, it's fucking weird, okay? But then again, what isn't weird in fucking Tonelico series? So anyways, back on track here. So if you shake the remote again using the same shoulder button that you used before, you can unleash an attack, and some of them are pretty damn funny if I say so myself. But the maximum amount of times you can purge is 3 times. If you do it a 4th time, you can do like a super special attack, which can be pretty trippy sometimes. And it's called a Flip Spear. And if you press X on the line correctly, you can do even more damage with it, which pretty much attacks every single enemy on the field. So as again, the battle system has changed again. And one thing I do find cool is that depending on the Raventail that you're using and what form they're in, the background music for the battles is going to be different. But of course they're not going to change if it's going to be like an important battle or a boss battle or something like that. But for any regular battle, it's usually going to be pretty different, which I think is a neat touch. So what I think about the battle system overall, it's weird, but it's at least okay. Not the greatest thing ever, but it's at least playable. And as for the top topics, well, they're back again, but this time they formatted them differently this time. Where there are some where you can find randomly on the map, and some where you have to invent a certain item or certain conditions have met, and finally there are some that just happen where you progress through the story. And they do the same thing like they did in the other ones, you know, you get to know more about them, and not only that, but you get to go further in the diving sessions. And speaking of the diving sessions, it's pretty much the same thing in this one like in the other ones, but this time it's more about witnessing their traumas that they experienced before. And you find some chibi looking things called humas. Now if you want to know what these little guys do, You equip them to a Ravatail to either L1, R1, L2, or R2, and while in battle, if you press that button and shake the remote when they purge, they can have effects, like having more attack, more defense, more resistance to certain elements, all that good stuff. And when you get more farther in the diving, you can unlock more of the alternate personas that you can use for the Ravatail. And Saki and Finn will have 3 each, and Tyria only has 1, I believe. But if I'm going to be talking about the diving for Tyria, all I have to say is that that one is really hard to figure out, because it's kind of like a whole visual novel story thing, and if you fuck something up, then you have to start all the way back at the beginning. So when it comes to the diving, it's not really a whole lot different from the other ones, but it does have some unique stuff with it. So yeah, that's really all I gotta say about the gameplay, and now let's move on to the graphics. And I think it looks alright. They don't use the 2D sprites anymore, instead they transitioned to 3D this time. And I think it looks alright, although of course you have to keep in mind that obviously it's not going to look anything like Metal Gear Solid 4 style or anything like that, but for the style that it's trying to be, which is an anime style, I think it actually looks alright. Although there are some pretty funny things that amuse me with this, is that why does all the male characters happen to wear puffy pants? What, I take it that on the planet of RCL, this happens to be a new trend going on of wearing MC Hammer pants? And then there's something else I want to mention, although I didn't mention it within the characters, but I figure I might as well mention it here, and that is the character Jack and Cruce show up within this game. And they look pretty different this time around. It kind of looks like they came out of Metal Gear Solid 3. I mean, I don't know if this was intentional here, but Jack looks awfully a lot like Snake from Metal Gear. And Cruce looks a lot like Eva from Metal Gear Solid 3, so yeah, like I said, I have a feeling they might have been inspired here. And something else about Jack within this game, in his character model, he looks awfully a lot like Old Snake from Metal Gear 4, because his hair looks more gray than anything. Now despite him looking different and look very MGS-like, it is a pretty interesting look, but of course, I do prefer the original look of him in the first game. But other than these minor amusement things, I do think that the graphics look okay for what it is. And now as for the music, now if you've heard what I had to say about the music within the first 2 games, well, it's exactly the same thing here, it's fucking awesome. So as for the background music, it sounds really good, suiting the theme and whatnot, and it does have some pretty weird sounding songs too, but you know what, those are pretty cool to have every once in a while. And as again, for the Hypno songs, those are fucking awesome as well. In fact, I'll play one Hypno song, at least a little bit of it for you, and that happens to be Cosmos Flip, because it's one of my favorite songs within this game. In fact, I love it so much that I actually had it on my ringtone for a while. So here's the preview. Yeah, I fucking love this. And interesting to note, it was sung by a Japanese singer named Koika, who is actually a really good Japanese singer, I find. So yeah, nothing more I need to say about the music fucking rocks. Now as for the voice acting, it's actually pretty damn good, surprisingly. So first you have Aoto, who is being played by Bryce Preppenbrook, and as much as I hate Aoto as a character, he actually does do a pretty good job filling out his role. So at least something good came out of Aoto for once. And then Saki is being played by Christina V, and she's pretty damn annoying as fuck in this game. Now before I write her off, all I have to say is that she does do a really good job as playing the other roles that are not Saki, you know, like her other personas, because yes, the voice actors that do play the main Ravatail also plays the personas within them as well, so at least that's good. And then Finnell is being played by Stephanie Stay, and I think she does a really good job as her and her other personas as well. And then the Doctor is being played by Kyle Hebert, and I think he does a really good job with him, as he normally does, because I think Kyle Hebert is definitely great. And then Tatsumi is being played by Johnny Young Bosch, which is also great, because I think he's also a really good voice actor. And then Reverend Gengai is being played by Richard Epcard, which is pretty damn epic. It's nice to see that they did got Richard Epcard back to replay a role within an Tonelico game. And as for Jack and Cruce, they have their original voice actor roles such as Spike Spencer and Jessica Strauss. And as you know, I'm a big fan of Spike Spencer, so I think that's definitely great. And as for Jessica Strauss, I think she does a better job this time around. Definitely a better improvement than the first game. And then you have other great roles such as Patrick Sates, Wendy Lee, Kate Higgins, Karen Strassman, Aaron Fitzgerald, Melissa Fawn, and Vic Mignogna. And as for the narrator, I really have no idea who it is, but I find it sounds an awful lot like David Lodge. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but either way, I really do think it does sound a lot like him. So overall, I actually have to say the voice acting is pretty damn good. Now, if you want to buy this game, it's kind of hard to say the exact price considering that it is a PS3 game, and while PS3 games now are kind of hard to differ between prices, but it's usually about like 20 to 30, and I do see it pretty often enough, so yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to find. You shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. It's definitely much easier to get than the first two games. But you never know, that might change over time where now this information I'm giving you could be irrelevant. But as of right now, you shouldn't have any issues finding a copy. And now we're going to talk about the score. So, if I were to rate this game, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. To be quite honest with you, I think this game is just as good as the second game. Obviously not nearly as good as the first game, but here's the way I look at it, where in this game, there are some things I like, and there are some things I don't like. And as for the second game, it's the same thing, where there are some things I like, and there are some things I don't like. Although this one has been a pretty weird bumpy ride for me, considering that this was the very first Tonelico game I ever played. Meaning that I really had no idea what to expect from this game the first time playing through it. And for the first time playing through it, I did like it. But then after taking interest in wanting to play through the other games in the series, I ended up not liking this one as much. It's kind of like one of those weird things where the first time you play a game in a series, but the one that you happen to play first happened to be the black sheep of the series. In fact, this has happened to me multiple times, where one example that I can think of off the top of my head is that the first Devil May Cry game I ever played was DMC2. So with that being said, when I first played through this one, I did like it at the time, but then after playing through the older ones, I ended up not liking it as much later on, but I still think it's an alright game. I mean, it does tell a pretty good story. Now, yeah, some of the characters are not like the greatest thing ever, and of course, you know, the whole like fan service thing is a little bit weird. Actually, scratch that, it's not a little bit weird, it's very fucking weird. And there's a lot of people that turned off from this game because of that. And of course I can understand this because not everyone is gonna like this sort of thing. And as usual, you get those kinds of people that say the only type of people that play Tonelico Koga are fucking weeboos. And as you guys know, I am not one of those kinds of people, okay? I'm willing to play whatever game I want, even if it has fan service or not. It really doesn't make a difference to me. As long as the game is interesting and can be fun, then that's all I really care about. And like I already said, this one does have a pretty good story. It's just, you know, if you can at least get over the whole fan service weirdo type shit, then you're gonna be fine. But of course, this game isn't for everyone, so it is kind of hard to recommend for people. But if you are a fan of the series or you want to take a look into the series, well, clearly this one isn't the best. And of course, I will agree, it is the black sheep of the series, but that doesn't mean it's like a terrible fucking game. Well, at least I don't think it's a terrible game. But if you do want to play through the entire series, at least this one does make for a pretty good laugh. So that's really all I have to say about Tonelico Koga, and well, it's fucking weird, but it's alright. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at the last game in this feature so far, and it happens to be Arno Surge Ode to an Unborn Star. And it was just developed by Gus this time, and it was published by Tecmo Koei, which is pretty interesting, making it the first of the series to not be published by NIS America. And it was released last year in 2014 in North America. And for a little bit, it was only released for the PlayStation 3, but until they made a newer version of it called Arno Surge Plus, which is for the PlayStation Vita. But that version just came out very recently from now, so that's kind of interesting how that worked out. But I'm taking a look at the PS3 version because it's the one that I happen to own, and not only that, but I don't even have the one for the Vita yet. So some people that are not too familiar with this series may not realize that this is even a part of the series at all. And obviously it is because, well, I'm including it within the feature. And probably one of the most interesting things about this game is that this game takes place 1,000 years before the first game in the series, making this a prequel. So now let's start talking about the story, and oh boy, this one is pretty damn complex. So it begins with a planet called Raciel, which has humans and a species called the Genom. So the planet Raciel has been destroyed, and now the humans are traveling around in a big-ass spaceship looking for another planet to inhabit. But they end up discovering a new species called the Sharl, which look like fairies. And all I have to say about the Sharl is that they're fucking mean bitches. so they happen to abduct some humans for some master plan, therefore making the humans think that Charles are very threatening. So I think that's a good enough backstory, what you need to know. In fact, there's a lot more happens that goes on, but if you really want to know that, well, there's actually a whole game that explains. It's called Ciela No Surge. And as of right now, it's only released in Japan, so maybe we might see that one coming out over here someday. So anyways, back on track. So there are 4 playable characters within the game, but they are separated within 2 groups. So the first group of characters are Delta and Cassie. So Delta is the male protagonist of this game, and he happens to be a member of Plasma, which is an elite organization that helps out around the town. And as for Cassie, well, normally you would expect me to say that she's a Raventail, but no, that isn't the case within this one. She is human, and she does know how to use song magic, so this means that humans were able to use song magic at one point. So Delta and Cassie run a restaurant, but Delta's always acting all lazy and shit, where all he ever wants to make at the restaurant is rice with salt on it, which, you know, doesn't sound all that appealing. So one of their friends, who is named Nay, decided to help them out with the restaurant, but she ends up taking over the entire thing, and so now they don't even have a restaurant anymore. So what they end up doing is that they end up going on a mission to look for a song called Ciela Num Protecta, and this song is supposedly really dangerous if it goes into the wrong hands. So that's kinda where Delta and Cassie's journey begins, and as for the other group of people, they are Earthus and Ionasol. So the character Earthus is a robot who has been put together by Ionasol, and the way they did his character within this game is very different compared to the rest of the characters. He's pretty much a silent protagonist because, you know, he doesn't have a voice and he doesn't really say a whole lot, but you do get some multiple choices for what he could say. So for this game series to have something like this, it's kind of refreshing. And as for Ionasol, who is most notably as Eon, well, she was the one that built Earthus, and she's one of those anti-violence person, just like Saki from the 3rd game, who want to try to unite the world with humans and Charles together. But she is trapped in the sealed world, but after escaping the sealed world, Eon and Earthus end up going by a town called Tenrosira, I believe it's pronounced. So for now, Eon and Earthus are trying to unite humans and Charles together. Now before I explain any more stuff about the story, I'm just going to say one quick thing. So the way how this progresses together is that if you play as one group of people, and you get to a certain point, it will let you know saying that you'll have to switch over to the other group of people to get to that point as well. In other words, they call it zapping in this game. So you can only progress so much within one group at a time, and then you have to catch up where the other group is depending how long you've played on each side. And of course the reason why this happens is because they interact with each other at certain points within the game, which is another new idea for this game. So there's not a whole lot else I can explain about the story, mainly because due to spoilers, and not only that, but this game is still pretty recent. And lastly, there is a lot of stuff that goes into this one. I really think this is the most in-depth game in the series, because there's a lot of parts within this game that are really confusing, and can be a bit hard to follow at times. But is the story at least good? Well, I think it's actually really damn good. I really do think it is an interesting story. And yeah, it can be a bit hard to follow at times, but once you do understand what's going on, I really do think it is quite good. And in some aspects, it does remind me a little bit of the Black Rock Shooter anime. Of course not entirely about it, but it does have some elements of it that does remind me of it. And I really like the characters a lot too, so that does help out making the story more interesting, at least to me anyways. But I guess there is one thing I could talk about before ending it here, and it's something that I don't really consider to be a spoiler, considering that if you ever seen the trailer before this game was even released, and you happen to be a fan of the first game, then well, this is no surprise, and that is that Shiralia is in this game. So that's pretty cool that you get to see her again, although this time she is much younger than what she is in the first game. So now I'm done talking about the story, so now let's move on to the gameplay. So as for the exploration, it's very much the same thing as all the other ones, you know, walking around town, walking around dungeons with the encounter bar. You can still jump within this game. But one thing that they did add new is that if you look at the bottom corner in a circle, you'll see a character's portrait. And you can scroll through it with R1 or L1, and it shows all the characters that are accompanying you at that time. And if you press square when it says to, they'll have conversations. So that's kind of cool that they have conversations while walking around town and walking around dungeons and stuff. And as for the battle system, well, it's different yet again. And if you're first looking at this, you probably might be really confused. I know I was really confused the first time I saw this, but surprisingly, the battle system is a lot more simpler than you'd think. so all the enemies are lined up within rows. And you use different attacks with X, square, and triangle, and every time you defeat all the enemies on the screen, even more will show up. So you're fighting a huge wave of enemies, and it seems like it's endless, but it really isn't. You're just fighting every single enemy that is around in that area. Sometimes you can kill them all within this one encounter rate, and if you don't, you'll only have to fight very few enemies within the next time you run into some. And certain enemies will have weaknesses that allow you to attack it once again, because you can only attack certain times before it's the enemy's turn. And then there's the Harmo Burst, which can go up to 4 levels. You make them go up more by when you dive into your partner. So this meter fills up the more times you attack. And what this meter does is that it allows you to do extra attacks without using up any of the attacks that you have set. It's pretty helpful if you ask me. And of course you can choose the song magic you want to activate. And then there's this one new thing that they added called a friend skill. And it's a special attack that you can only do once per battle. It's mostly a support attack which you acquire from one of your friends within the game, such as Sarly, Nay, and many others. Also, you have to complete the battles within a certain amount of turns, and once the turns is up, then the battle is over automatically. Personally, I think it makes it a bit way too easy. But I guess for this sort of battle system, I guess it kinda makes sense, but I don't know. It's a weird battle system, but it is easy to understand once you actually playing it. But man, this game is just really hard to explain properly. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone was complaining to me saying that I'm not explaining it right. Well, I'm really trying my best here, but I think I am doing okay. I mean, do you guys understand what I'm talking about? So here's the layman's terms of explaining this battle system. When you encounter an enemy, you're fighting every single enemy within that area at once. You have a limited amount of times you can attack each turn. You can shield yourself from an attack up to 3 times. You can only activate a friend skill once. And you can activate song magic anytime you want. So I think that covers it. Yeah, like I said, it may look confusing, but when you're actually playing it, it really isn't all that confusing. But it's definitely unique, that's for sure. And as for the diving in this game, they call it Genometrics. But other than the name changes, it's pretty much the same exact thing. You know, it's a visual novel thing, and you have to spend dive points to do different things and whatnot. But one thing that is new within this one is that when you dive into someone, you actually go through other characters' geometric system, so you really get to know more about the other characters. Because in this game, you don't make choices to try and go after one girl or another, because it's pretty obvious that Delta and Cassie are together, and Ionisol and Earthus is a robot be together. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck to think about them. So that's all I have to say about the diving, and you think this is weird, well trust me, we're gonna get into some more weird shit. Now, maybe not on the level of Tonelico's 3's weirdness, but pretty weird enough that it makes you turn your head. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the synthesis. You know, the thing that makes you create items by mixing stuff together. Within the other games, it was pretty normal. I mean, all you had to do is that you just mix items together, and after when the item is being made, you and your other person would like start having a conversation about that item. Well, this exact thing does happen here, but this is the really fucked up part here. Because in this game, when you make items, you have to dance. Like, do you not believe me or something? Well, you'll believe me now. What the fiddlesticks? I don't have a word to describe what I just watched. But we'll just let that sink in there. And now there is one more weird thing that I have to talk about, and that is the purification. And this goes back to Tonelico 2 with the whole taking a bath thing, but this time it's you and the heroine taking a bath in a hot spring. And this time they switch to their bathing suits. Okay, nothing too weird here, I mean this is pretty normal. And then they also have conversations while they're taking a bath, so yeah, as again, that's pretty normal. And then now we get to talk about inserting the crystals. Yeah, I'll insert a crystal up your ass. Nah, I'm just kidding. All you have to do is that you insert crystals for more power-ups, but you have to choose the body part that you want to insert them into. Either it's like arms, legs, stomach, head, even chest later on. And now you're probably thinking, well, of course, you have to only do it with the girl, right? Actually, no, you can do it with the guys too. Or the guy and the robot. But they can also say some pretty amusing stuff sometimes too, like this.
Do you have a foot fetish or something?
Yeah, didn't I tell you this is weird shit? So yeah, that's enough of that. I mean, that's all you really need to know is that you just take a bath and you put crystals into each other so that you get different abilities. Man, I never thought I'd ever have to say that in a sentence. So, I think that's really about it about the gameplay. and all I have to say about it, it's actually good, but at the same time it does have some weird elements to it, but you know what, it's at least an improvement over the third game. Although I do have one complaint, although it's not necessarily about the gameplay itself, but it has to do with some of the text. Now, if you've played this game around when it first came out, it had some strange translation errors, and I can't remember any example off the top of my head considering that they did patch this game and now it doesn't have as much errors as it used to, although I haven't noticed any after the patch. But I do remember seeing two spots that were a little bit off, but other than that, I don't really have much else to say. It could have been done better though, that's for sure. So now we finally get to talk about other things such as graphics. I think the graphics are really suiting for this game. It's also a better improvement over the third game on the PlayStation 3, but I really don't have any issues with it whatsoever. So I think the graphics are good for what they are. And as for the music in this game, well, if you've ever paid attention within all the other videos that I've done related to this series, it's fucking awesome. But there is one thing I should say that I haven't mentioned before, and that is that one of the other reasons why I really like the OSTs within this game, or within this series in general, it always had a wide variety of genres, which I think was great. So it will at least have a little bit of everything for everyone. But as for this game itself, definitely has a really good soundtrack. So you know what I'm gonna say, you know what, some of the songs are really catchy, so a lot of them suit the theme, and well, they just sound really awesome altogether. But one thing that is interesting to point out is that there are some songs in this game that they actually remade from the first game. Like, this is an example right here. Whatever version you prefer, I like both of them equally. And as for the hymno songs on this one, well, it's definitely awesome then again, I didn't expect anything less. But one thing that is really cool is that there's one song that is actually being sung by a Japanese singer known as Origa, who has been pretty well known for singing some songs for the anime Ghost in the Shell, which is pretty awesome. So I'll give you a bit of a preview of the song that she sang in this game. Yes, definitely fucking amazing. As much as I'd love to play the other ones within this game, but we would be here all damn day, so I'm not gonna do that. But there is one thing that is very sad about this, is that the singer Orgia actually passed away sometime this year. In fact, this was the last thing that she ever worked on before she passed. So all I gotta say here is, rest in peace. So yeah, overall, you know what I'm gonna say about the music. I fucking love it. And as for the voice acting, I actually like it quite a bit myself. So first you have Delta, who is being played by Johnny Young Bosch, so that's always cool to have. And then Cassie is being played by Stephanie Stay, and I think she does a really good job as her. In fact, I think she did a better job here than she did with Findle from the third game. And then Ionasol is being played by Christina V, who, as again, does do a better job this time around than she did in the third game. Now, as good as they are, I kinda wish that they did have two different voice actresses to play them, because they already played them within the third game. It would've been nice to have someone else a chance. But other than that, I really have no complaints with them. And then you have a whole slew of other ones that are pretty good, like Wendy Lee, who has played in every single Tonelico game, which is kind of interesting. And then there's Michelle Ruff and Karen Strassman, who always do an awesome job. And then you have Todd Haberkorn and KG Tang, who also do a damn good job. And then you have some newer ones that actually do a pretty solid job, like Erica Mendez, Kira Buckland, and Carmi Lay, who always does a really good job, at least from all the roles that I've ever heard her in. So that's really all I have to say about that. So overall, I really like the cast here. I think it's really good. Now, if you want to buy this game, it's kind of hard to tell right now because, you know, it is pretty recent. But because this is a pretty late entry PS3 title, it's pretty hard to tell where this one is going to sit within the future within its price range. But if you think this is a game that does interest you, then you might as well go pick it up while you can. Now, I'm not telling you guys saying that, oh my god, you have to go get this game because it's gonna cost like $1 bajillion in the future. What I'm saying is that the game is still pretty recent, meaning that you should be able to find some copies here and there at whatever store you go to. So if this is something that interests you, then don't be afraid to pick it up. So that's all I have to say about the price range because it's kinda hard to say for right now. So anyways, let's move on. Now, if I were to rate this game, I'd have to give it a 7 out of 10. I found myself to be really enjoying this one. Now, not as much as the first game in the series, but it is definitely better than 2 and 3. It has a lot of interesting aspects, but at the same time it also has some weird aspects. Well, at least they're funny. And as convoluted as the story may be, it's at least really good once you really get into it. But of course, that's just what I think. And for a game that's supposed to be a prequel, I think they did a solid effort on it. And personally, for an RPG on the PlayStation 3, it's pretty underrated. But of course, like I've already said a bajillion times, this game is not going to be for everyone. But I found myself liking it. And not as much as the first game, but it's at least a pretty good game. So, oh man, we're finally done with the Tonelico feature unless they make 2 more games. But that won't be for a pretty long time, so we don't have to worry about that. And I had to admit, reviewing this series really was a challenge for me. Because not only that reviewing one RPG game is pretty challenging as it is, but I had to do 4 of them. And doing reviews for RPG games really does take some time, especially if they're ones that I've never played before or haven't played a lot of. But thankfully this is a series that I've known quite a lot about before, so it wasn't as hard as it normally would have been, but I had to say, this one definitely took me some time to do. But I'm happy with it, and also, the series itself, yeah, I think it is a pretty decent series overall. But of course, I definitely recommend the first game you should definitely try out. And then you can try out the other ones if you really are that interested to try them. But I don't think they're bad, like I've already said, like they're actually decent games, but they do have some issues, but they do have some good moments. And then the recent one, Arno Surge, has a pretty good balance. But I'd say more good than bad than anything. So yes, this is what I think about the Tonelico series, and the best part being the OST for all 4 games, so I can highly recommend you to listen to that. But this video is going longer than it should have, so I'm going to end it right here. So I hope you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching and commenting.